It hasn't even been a day since I first laid eyes upon it. I was dropping my girlfriend off for her last in-person yoga class before everything went back on lockdown for the winter, when a portrait hanging in the display window of the shop across the street unexpectedly caught my attention. It was an 18-inch by 24-inch expressionist painting of a black humanoid creature with poorly defined edges and features, like it was bleeding into the shadows around it. It was tall, gaunt, and hunched, dressed in a tattered hood and mantle that vaguely resembled a set of wings. It lacked all facial features save for a pair of misty white eyes, the only part of its body that wasn't black. It held a lumpy sack in one hand, and in the other, it plucked up a child between two of its long, Dr. Seuss-esque fingers. The child was bruised and bloodied, and undeniably terrified for its life, but no motive could be inferred from the stance of its tormentor. The whole scene was reminiscent of Saturn devouring his children, only with Saturn reimagined as some sort of Lovecraftian boogeyman. My interest sufficiently piqued, I decided to go inside for a closer look. The shop in question was Orville's old-fashioned oddity outlet, and was mildly infamous for selling strange items of questionable authenticity. Ever since I had first started taking my girlfriend to the neighboring Eve's Eden of Esoterica, I often found myself wondering how old Orville managed to stay in business. His oddity shop rarely seemed busy, and from what I could tell, most people agreed that his merchandise was overpriced hokum. It could have just been that Orville was living off an inheritance or something and was operating his business at a loss for the hell of it, or that the runoff from Eve's was enough to keep him afloat. But a quick glance at the local paranormal forum, heroichallows.net, produced photographs of some of our town's wealthiest residents visiting the shop, along with a handful of other mysterious figures who nobody recognized. Everything from cloaked cultists to colorful clown girls have been seen making after-hours visits to Orville's. So maybe, just maybe, a few of Orville's high-end items were legit, and the occasional sale to his select clientele was all he needed to stay in business. It was a fun little thought as I stepped through the door, paying no heed to the large caveat emptor emblazoned upon it. VHS tapes? What am I supposed to do with VHS tapes? I heard a gruff voice ask. I turned towards it and saw an old man in a garish pastel suit, with his feet upon his desk and a phone in his hand. With his other hand, he indicated he would be with me in one moment. Nobody has a VCR anymore, so what good would... You have a VCR to go with the tape collection? And what's his deal? Of course you can't set the clock, there's nothing paranormal about that. Listen, what are you trying to sell? The tapes? Oh, what's on the tapes? Because if it's what's on the tapes, then maybe you could... Uh-huh. Well, I'll never be able to move them as a general item if I had to convince people to buy an obsolete VCR to go with them. I might be able to broker a deal for a specific buyer, but I'll need more information. Not now, though. I've got a customer. I'll call you back. I said, no. If you put a piece of Scotch tape over the remove tab, you can tape over it again. If there's tape residue, then they could have been taped over already, but it could just be from an old label. How would I know? Yeah, you go figure that out. I gotta go. He hung up the receiver on the cradle of a bronze and mahogany rotary phone before folding his fingers and giving me his full attention. Honestly, the things some of these jerks try to unload on me, he said with a roll of his eyes. Anywho, can I help you find anything, young man? Yeah, actually. I was wondering about that painting in the window, I replied, pointing to the display behind me. Oh, you mean the self-portrait of Rancorus Ruck? The old man flashed me a devious smile before donning an iridescent tragedy mask with a surgical mask fixed to the inside. Self-portrait? I asked skeptically. Absolutely, he said, rising from his seat and leading me towards the painting. Cryptids and monsters are notoriously difficult to get decent photographs of, and that was a bit of a problem for old Rancor here. He can't exist in the real world unless he already exists in the mind of a suitable host, let's say. He's sustained by thoughts around him and uses his host's innate mental energy to manifest a physical form for himself. This presents a bit of a catch-22, since he needs people to know about him to exist, but existing is kind of a prerequisite for people to know about you. What's a damned thought form to do? If you're a thought-based murder monster with an artistic streak like Rancorus Ruck here, you leave a self-portrait behind as a calling card. That way, Even after your host is pushing up daisies, another one is bound to come along sooner or later and end up getting you stuck in their head. He took the portrait down from the easel and allowed me to get a better look at it, taking care not to look at it himself. The first thing I noticed was that the lumps of the sack were much more clearly hands or feet or faces pushing against it from the inside. The bottom of the sack was wet and dripping with a dark fluid, presumably blood, and the background showed many small sets of footprints running rapidly in all directions. Finally, in the corner, I could make the signature of the artist in the same stark white as the creature's eyes. Rancorus Ruck, self-portrait, September 1947. So, you're claiming that the creature in the portrait is the artist, and it leaves these paintings behind as a way to infect other victims? I asked incredulously. That's right. And anyone with a lick of sense or concern for their fellow human beings burns them, so they're very rare, Orville replied. I know what you're thinking. Why in the world would anyone pay $1,300 for a cursed painting? $1,300? Before taxes and various fees and surcharges, yeah. The reason is that since old rancor is sustained by your thoughts, you're able to exert some control over how you manifest. The more you study this portrait, the more of Rancorus you take into yourself. And if you're strong enough, the more of him you can bend to your will. Potentially very useful, or, life-saving, if he decides to come after you. Which he probably will, since you've taken such an interest in his handiwork. Good luck getting him out of your head now. Seriously though, your best bet is to buy the painting and study every square inch of it until your eyes are bloodshot, put in some eye drops, and keep studying. I was more than a little confused by Orville's sales pitch of buy this possessed painting in the hopes of inoculating yourself against the demon first. I didn't really believe him, but I did find the story mildly entertaining. As for the painting itself, I genuinely liked it. It was delightfully macabre, and I was curious about why the artist would have titled it a self-portrait. I could tell that it was an actual painting though, and not a print. So even though I would have liked some actual provenance on the piece, $1,300 wasn't an outrageous asking price for a decent work by an unknown artist. As much as I hate myself for it, I ended up buying the damn thing, which came to almost $1,600 with all of Orville's taxes, fees, and surcharges. He wrapped it up very carefully, still taking the greatest of care not to look at it himself, and helped me Tetris the thing into the trunk of my car. I didn't want my girlfriend to see it, not because I was afraid of the curse, but because I was afraid of her cursing me out. Fortunately, when she came out of Eve's, she put her bags in the back seat instead of the trunk. I didn't really have a plan for what I would have said if she had opened the trunk, but I got lucky. That was a fight we could save for another day. Once I had taken her home and gotten back to my own apartment, for some reason I took Orville's advice and carefully inspected the painting before hanging it up. It didn't make any sense though, since there wasn't really anything to study. Rancorus Ruck was just a shadow person, and there didn't seem much more I could learn just by looking at him. If I squinted, I thought that maybe I could make out the outline of a belt, ragged sleeves, or the tattered hem of his hood, but that was it. I stared into the empty void of his face, thinking that if there was any hidden detail, that was where I'd find it. But no matter how hard I looked, I couldn't see anything other than those two white eyes. Since my thorough examination of the piece failed to yield any hidden secrets, I felt comfortably reassured that old Orville had been full of crap. I even Googled Rancorus Ruck and got 0 results, which seemed a crushing blow to Orville's claim that there had ever been any multiple paintings by an artist using that pseudonym. I was convinced the painting was a one-off by an unknown artist that had somehow found its way into Orville's shop, and he made up a story to go with it, as he did for all his wares. I did vaguely recall seeing something about a red ruck on the Herwick Hollows forum, but I didn't think too much of it. I figured both were just drawing inspiration from the same local legend. I tried taking a photo of the portrait with my phone to upload to the forum, and that's when things first started to get weird. When I looked at the portrait through my phone, Ruck was nothing but an amorphous black cloud. There was nothing humanoid about his form at all, and the white bits that had been his eyes were now clearly just breaks in the cloud. I fiddled around with the settings and even the lighting in my room, but nothing could make Rancorus Ruck appear in the screen the way he did in the portrait. This got even more unsettling when I tried to take a photo or record a video. Each and every time, the file wouldn't save, no matter what I did. I tried saving it to the device, the SD card, the cloud, but nothing worked. At this point, I was starting to get a little freaked out, but there were still rational explanations to explore before accepting Orville's cockamamie story. Like, maybe the portrait wasn't from 1947 at all, but was far more modern and embedded with some machine-readable code for digital rights management. But that wasn't really how something like that would work, was it? I would get a notification telling me I didn't have the rights to share the image. It wouldn't just inexplicably be unable to save files, and it certainly wouldn't automatically censor it the way it was doing. Could it have been a joke or a marketing scheme then? But that still would have required getting the software onto my phone somehow. Maybe my phone was infected with the malware, and it was just a coincidence that the first thing I tried to take a photo of was this creepy painting. That was pretty much all I could think of, aside from the obvious theories about losing my marbles. Frustrated, I tossed my phone aside and leaned in to examine the portrait once again, to see if I could find anything that might explain the incongruity between what I was seeing and what the camera on my phone saw. I found myself staring into Ruck's eyes. The eyes that my phone said were nothing more than empty spaces in a shapeless black form, but they were too deliberately placed and shaped to be anything but eyes, and they had been painted by a very distinct white to contrast with the darkness around them, making their presence undeniable. I could even make out the faint outline of pupils and irises, though I hadn't noticed them before. In fact, now that I was really looking at them, I could see that they even had corneas, each of which held the reflection of a vague, ghostly figure. It was actually astonishing how much detail had gone into eyes that would only be noticed up close. By then, I was really starting to wish that my girlfriend had discovered the painting. At least then I'd have a rational excuse to take it back to Orville's. Not that he would have taken it back. He was very clear that the only thing about his shop that wasn't real was his return policy. I tried to convince myself that I was just being silly. The whole reason I bought the painting was because it was creepy, and if I had spent as much money on my phone as I had on it, maybe it would be able to take a decent picture of it. Sighing in defeat, I resigned myself to living with the portrait for at least one night. If it was still a problem in the light of day, I'd try to pawn it off on some gallery or museum for a tax deduction. Sleep, unsurprisingly, eluded me that night. Have you heard of the Tetris effect? It's when you have residual imagery of something you were really focused on, either in the dark or in your peripheral vision. Well, as I laid in the dark that night, I could see Rancorus Ruck. At first, it was just his eyes floating in the darkness, his body as amorphous as it had been on my phone. But, gradually, he started to take shape. His head, his hood, and his mantle, then his limbs, his torso, and finally his sack all slowly emerged as distinct from the surrounding darkness. And I could see him as clearly as if I was looking at his portrait. The child, however, did not appear, leaving Ruck with a free hand. He held up his long fingers to his face to examine them, and I thought nothing of it, dismissing it as more hypnagogic imagery. Then he lowered his hands and looked towards me, and a smile made of nothing more than a bright white line broke out across his face. He set his sack on the ground and began noisily rummaging through it, and as I drifted off to sleep, I remember thinking that it was very odd that a residual image on my retina should be able to make any noise at all. It was still night when I awoke again, still dark, but I could immediately tell something was wrong. My bedroom door was open when I knew I had closed it, and light was leaking in through the crack when I knew I had turned all the lights off. Panicking, I bolted out of bed and dashed into the living room, ready to confront any intruders with only my bare fists. My machismo vanished pretty quickly when I saw what was waiting for me in that room. In the sepia light of candles that I didn't own, I saw the hunched figure of Rancorus Ruck working ardently at another self-portrait. His back was turned to me, and thus the painting was facing my direction. He had drawn himself emerging out of an inky black patch of mold onto a brick wall, wrapping his hand around the mouth of his victim while brandishing a knife in the other. Even though his victim's face was mostly covered by his hand, there wasn't the slightest doubt in my mind that it was supposed to be me. He turned around to face me then, his face nothing more than two white dots and a smile against an impenetrable black void. He held up his brush, heavy with paint that he carelessly let drip to my floor, and moved slightly to the side so that I could get a better view of his artwork. "I don't think I got your eyes quite right, boy," he mocked in a raspy voice. I hope you can live with that. I didn't respond. Hell, I barely heard him. My heart was pounding so hard. My veins were flooded with adrenaline, but I couldn't will my limbs to move. I was practically catatonic, sweating and shivering as I just stared wide-eyed at the monster painting in my living room. Ruck just snickered in contempt, turning his attention back to his painting, adding a few finishing touches. Only then, when his back was turned and I thought I actually had a chance, did I run. I ran to my apartment door and threw it open, only to see old Rancor casually standing in the doorframe, blocking my path. "Hello," he smirked, with an exaggerated wave of his long, mangy fingers. "Yes, Dr. Seuss-esque is what you called them, if I'm not mistaken. A colorful description, I must admit, even if it's not exactly what I was going for." I slammed the door shut, but it just went right through him, and he had somehow moved up slightly so that I had just shut him into the apartment with me. I had two choices then, either to fight him head-on or try to reach the fire escape. For absolutely nothing resembling a rational motive, I tried to throttle him and tackle him to the ground. Before I could even make contact, though, he slipped behind me with an ethereal ease and leapt onto my back, putting me into a chokehold and muffling my screams with his hand. I frantically tried to buck him off, slamming up against the wall and rolling onto the floor, but he clung to me with a dauntless and uncanny tenacity. It didn't take long for me to exhaust my oxygen supply like that, and I quickly lost consciousness. I wasn't dead, though, not yet. I awoke at my desk, tied to my chair with my laptop booted up and placed in front of me. It was still night, and I probably wasn't out for more than a few minutes. I began frantically looking around for my attacker, and sure enough, he was standing over me with his arms crossed, waiting patiently for me to wake up. "What the hell are you?" I demanded, struggling against my bindings whilst on the verge of hyperventilation. "Exactly what Orville told you, or at least close enough that it's not worth going over again," he replied. He bent over and picked up his soggy, dripping sack, and I could see slowly writhing faces, hands, and other body parts pushing against it from the inside, moaning in dull anguish as they thrashed within their burlap prison. "See this? In here are all the minds of my old victims, and they're what keeps me going when the world forgets about me. You're going in here too, but not just yet. I have a small favor to ask of you first." "Go to hell," I cursed, vehemently spitting at him. He backhanded me so hard my chair toppled over. I was too out of it for a second to notice him putting me back up, but apparently he did, because when I came back to my senses, I was looking at my computer again. "Orville was right, you know. Your thoughts sustained me, so all you had to do to beat me was not think of me as a monster." He taunted me, his smile twisting into a jagged white scrawl of chalk as he squeezed my cheeks with his prickly, slimy fingers. "A shame that it's easier said than done. You've managed to make one non-trivial contribution to my being, though. Aside from the Seuss-esque fingers, of course. You couldn't find a single search result when you Googled me, and in this day and age, one needs an online presence if one hopes to get anywhere. So here's the deal. I'm going to paint, and you're going to write. And if you come up with something postable by the time I've finished my painting, you'll get the privilege of going into my sack in one piece. But if you refuse..." He held his sack up to my face and pulled it open. Inside was an endless abyss of severed limbs, flayed skins, decapitated heads, and scalped faces, all of them still animate and aware. Worst of all, most of them looked like they had come from children. He snapped the bag shut again, and I tried to muster up the courage to tell him to go to hell again, but
but I couldn't. And so, I'm writing this. Rancorus Ruck's debut post to the interwebs, exposing him to a bigger audience than his paintings ever could. I don't know if something written by someone else will infect people the same way as his paintings do, but I really hope they don't. But if this post does infect people, please know that I'm truly, truly sorry. The bastard's in my head now, and I'm not strong enough to resist him. Once I post this, I'm going in the sack. And maybe you think that's what I deserve for giving in to Rancor's demands. But if you pity me at all, and you ever happen to be in somber me, then please, please, do me one favor. Burn Orville's shop to the ground.
Welcome to WNOK, the place you come when you're all alone. I'm Dr. Feelright, waiting to take your call on another rainy night in the city. You need a friend? Dr. Feelright's gonna take you in. Let's get back to the phone lines. Alice on 2. What's on your mind tonight, Alice?
Dr. Jensen?
It was one of my regular patients from the office, Alice Stone. I recognize her voice. My regulars didn't call the station as a rule, but I'd take this call. She was clinically depressed and suffered from dissociative disorder, but was generally harmless if left to her own devices. This is Dr. Feelright. What's on your mind? Silence.
You're gonna be upset with me?
I'm not here to judge you, Alice. I just want to help. Tell me what's going on. More silence.
I've made a mess in your room.
My room? What room? Where are you, Alice? What sort of mess?
There's blood. Lots of blood.
Are you in danger, Alice? Are you hurt? Tell me, what's going on?
No, I'm not hurt. Not in danger.
Whose blood then? More silence. I heard rustling sounds in the background. Alice? This is live radio. We do need to keep things moving. What's this about blood?
Yes, I'm sorry. It's your wife's.
My wife's? That's not something you heard on live radio every day. What are you talking about, Alice? Where are you?
I'm at your house. In your room.
I snapped my fingers to get my producer's attention. I muted the mic and told her to call 911 to send the police to my house. I hear you, Alice. I can tell you're upset. You must be scared.
Yeah.
I'm here to help you. Now tell me, why do you think you're at my house? How is it you know where I live?
I've seen it before, from the outside. I found it in the property records.
That was plausible, I supposed, but my house was owned by a family trust. It would have taken some doing.
She woke up before she died.
She was crying softly now.
I cut her throat like you told me, but she opened her eyes and saw me before she died.
He? Who is he?
The man who talks to me sometimes.
Is he there now?
No.
More rustling, like maybe she was wiping her nose.
Well, yes, he's here, but only in my head. But he's quiet now.
I need to know precisely where you are, Alice, so I can call an ambulance. It sounds like someone's hurt.
She isn't hurt. She's dead.
Alice, I insist you tell me where you are.
I've already told you. I'm in your house. In your room.
And you're alone? No one is there with you?
No. Well, just your wife, but...
But the man who tells you things. You're saying he's not real. He's not really there?
Oh, he's real. I just can't see him.
Jesus Christ, this woman was more messed up than I'd realized. Nothing I'd seen from her to date indicated this type of delusion. She was young, though. Maybe the onset of schizophrenia? What's the address where you are, Alice? It's very important that you tell me right now.
You don't know your own address?
If you're really at my house, How did you manage to get in without tripping the alarm?
The man.
The man? He let you in?
No. He told me about the key under the plant, and he gave me the code to disarm the alarm.
Alice, listen to me. This is very important. Are you listening?
Yeah.
There has never been any key under a plant at my house. Maybe you thought you went to my house, but you went somewhere else. Look around for a piece of mail or something. I need to be sure where you are. Otherwise, I can't help you. There were more rustling sounds, and then came another voice, a sweet little voice I knew all too well. It was my daughter, my baby girl.
Daddy?
Fear gripped my throat.
Daddy, Mommy's got blood. I can't get her to wake up. She's got blood.
Baby? Oh my fucking God. That crazy bitch had my daughter? Why was Jamie even there? She was supposed to have stayed the night with one of her friends. Baby, why are you at home? I thought you were staying the night with Stacy.
I got scared. Mommy came and got me.
Mommy? No. What was happening? This couldn't be.
She won't wake up.
Mommy's tired, baby. Listen, could you please get the phone back to the other lady? There was silence. But finally...
You see?
It was Alice.
I told you the truth. I wouldn't lie to you, Dr. Jensen.
What have you done? I needed to stay calm. Needed to keep Alice calm. My little girl's life was hanging in the balance. Alice, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Where's my daughter now?
She's here, on the bed. She's talking to her mother, holding her hand and crying a little. I think she's scared.
But she is safe, right? She's not in any danger, is she?
Oh, no. The man told me. She's a princess and mustn't be touched. She's good. Not like her mother. Her mother was evil and needed to die. She had to die, but not little Jamie. Little Jamie is good and mustn't be touched.
And the man knows, right? The man is good?
Oh, yes, he's good. He's a good man.
This was beyond horrifying. Beyond surreal. My wife was supposed to have been home alone. She was supposed to have been alone.
Dr. Jensen, I hear something. Someone's coming in the house.
Thank Christ. That's good. That's good, Alice. I think it's the police. They're coming to help you.
But I'm scared. I'm scared they'll hurt me.
No. They won't hurt you. They're going to help you. Trust me, Alice. You trust me, right?
Yes, I trust you.
Good. The police are there to help you. In fact, why don't I have them bring you to where I am? Would you like that?
Yes, I'd like that. Very much.
Good. Me too. Listen, why don't you send Jamie out in the hall to get them? It's a big house and they might get lost. Silence. Alice?
I don't think they're here to help me, Dr. Jensen. I think I need to leave.
Alice? No. Wait. I heard a clunking sound. Like maybe the phone had fallen to the floor. Alice? No. Alice? Complete silence. It was the most horrifically terrifying sound I'd ever heard. I kept calling out to her, calling out to Alice and then to my daughter. But there was no sound at all from the other end. She'd taken her. That crazy bitch had taken my little girl. I got up and started for my car without even having made the decision to, without speaking a word to my producer. I had to get home. Had to get home. I kept the call open and listened best as I could as I ran. Once I'd started my car, the call synced up with the communication system. Just as I broke through the parking garage gate and squealed onto the street, I heard voices on the line. Frenetic, distant voices, but they were moving closer. Closer. Then, there was a protracted commotion, which from my impotent perspective was excruciating, but finally someone picked up the phone.
Dr. Jensen?
Yes?
This is Officer Steele. I'm in your bedroom with your wife.
Yes. What about my daughter?
We haven't found anyone else. I have officers securing the house and EMTs are working on your wife. Are you saying your daughter is here?
Yes, my daughter and Alice Stone. That's whose phone you're holding.
They were just there a few minutes before. I was talking to them. I could hear several officers speaking, but I couldn't make out what they were saying. Then, Dr. Jensen, are you sure your daughter is supposed to be here? We haven't found anyone else in the house. Just your wife. Then check outside. They couldn't have gotten far. They were just there, right before you picked up the phone. Please, God, please. She's got my daughter. She's in grave danger. Please find her, please. More garbled talking on the other end of the call. Then, who is the lady? Alice Stone. She's a patient of mine. She's not well. She broke into my house. Please, please find them. We're looking. Listen, do you know what kind of car she drives? I have no idea. Officer Steele started to say something else, but then the call dropped. I tried to call back several times, but it kept going straight to voicemail. I was all alone, racing down the rain-soaked interstate toward my house, toward what I was coming to believe was a tragedy of my own creation. None of the patients I'd ever used the deep hypnosis techniques on had ever been aware of the fact that they'd been hypnotized, including Alice, and they'd all proved to be very susceptible to suggestion. Alice had been exceptionally so, which is why I had chosen her. Of course, I'd instructed her that my daughter wasn't to be harmed, on the off chance they might have crossed paths, but I thought I'd taken care of all that. Why had my wife gone to get her? Why? As I sped along at a speed a little too high to be safe on these wet roadways, what I came to focus on was how likely it was that Alice would follow my instructions where Jamie was concerned. Could I trust her? Or, more aptly, could I trust that I'd effectively instilled the dictum? Or was she too screwed up in the head to be counted on? She'd followed the instruction about my wife. Wouldn't she follow the one about Jamie? Wouldn't she? Why the rush? The voice had come from behind, and it had startled me, but I knew its demonic timbre all too well. I knew whom it was there in my back seat. My old friend had come to call. Please, I begged, please, you've got to help me. Seems all I've ever done is help you. What have you ever done for me? But this is different. It's my little girl. I made no deal with your little girl. This is a situation of your own creation. But she's innocent. Really? I glanced in the rearview mirror and caught a glimpse of his harsh profile as the lights from an oncoming car rushed past. In my experience, I found that we're all a little guilty. No, you don't understand, I understand perfectly well. It's you who seems confused. You wanted special gifts, special talents, and I gave them to you. You wanted the ability to influence people. He roared a malevolent laugh. I could smell the stench of his breath. And I gave you that too, as if you have the capacity to understand the first thing about it. This isn't right. It isn't fair. Fair? You speak to me of fair. What about your wife, lying dead in your bed over nothing more than her misfortune of having married such a small little man, one who couldn't deal with the rigors of upright life? How fair was that for her? Who are you to talk to me about fair? There was more to say, more pleading to do, but I couldn't find the words. This will end as it ends, he said. And however it turns out, you will keep the knowledge that all of it, every last drop, came by your hand. My driveway was filled with police cruisers and an ambulance, so I pulled along the curb in front of my house. I glanced in the mirror as I came to a stop. As expected, my old friend was gone. I noticed several officers walking toward my car, and they didn't seem to be in any particular hurry. I got out to face them. Their expressions were grim. You fall, expecting to hit the ground, but you don't. You instead end up in an alternate dimension, one ruled by
harsh fluorescent light, and soggy yellow carpet. The only thing you can see is half walls and endless rooms, all wallpapered in an awful yellow design. Welcome to the back rooms. They have been once again waiting for you, and they have gotten much, much worse. The thought of suddenly and unknowingly ending up in a world other than your own is terrifying. Some describe the back rooms as a dingy office space with no escape. Others describe it as a multi-level parallel universe. Some layers are littered with terrible entities that get more violent the deeper you go. There are separate theories for the creatures and what they can and will do to you. The facts. There are 8 main levels and 3 secondary levels, documented at this time, at least. Level 0 starts the lobby. Level 2, lurking danger. Level 3, electrical station. Level 4 is the office, while level 5 is terror hotel. Level 6 is lights out. Level 7 is the flooded house. And level 8, the cave system. Not one of those sounds delightful. Not even the office. Just talk to anyone that has had to ride a cubicle for most of their adult life. We are on floor 0, the topmost floor. As mentioned before, it is the one with the dingy carpets and moldy wallpaper. There are a few creatures called entities. Some are helpful and some are passive, while most are incredibly aggressive. Most of the documentation about these creatures have been found on scratching on the walls or notes left on pieces of paper. It seems that when you enter the back rooms, you fall back to your caveman roots, placing cave drawings on the walls to create posterity for the poor folks that follow you. The most common entity on this level are known as facelings. They seem to take the shape of human males, but with no facial features. They are always friendly on level 0. There's also 6 arms, believed to be aggressive, but there has only been one confirmed sighting of this entity on level 0. 6 arms are known to be on level 1 and 2 more than any other. It's believed that level 0 is fairly safe. The only concern is food and water. You may find a base or get lucky enough to find other inhabitants, but due to the size of this level, you will most likely be alone. You might find almond water scattered about. No one has explained why almond water is so popular in the back rooms, but enjoy it when you find it. Finding some is still incredibly rare though, and you are most likely going to have to extract water from the carpets. Supposedly it doesn't harm you. I suggest you do the same if you find yourself there. It's better than starving. I didn't say this would at all be pleasant. Level 1 is called lurking danger, and rightfully so. If you found yourself here, prepare for every moment from here on out to get progressively worse. There are more entities on this level. It's thought that there are not very many friendlies here either. The entities you may find here are dullers, hounds, and skin stealers, all harmful. On this level, it's important to stay as sane as possible. It's thought that creatures here feed on your fear and weakness. They can tell you have been wandering at level 0 for some time. The food and water are also similar here. The key to surviving level 1 is to avoid the hounds. They crawl on all fours and are aggressive every time you encounter one. If you do encounter one, you only have 2 options: run or stare it down. It's believed that hounds, while vicious, are intimidated if you show any form of dominance. Stare into their eyes until they turn away. Or if you already ran out of fear, then run as fast as you can. Run into every room you see. Double back if you have to. Anything to throw the hound off your trail. The skin takers are the most feared entity on this level. While normally docile, they will consume any living thing they see when hungry. I would assume they are always hungry if I were in the back rooms. They will wear your flesh on top of their own. I don't mean they'll take your skin and place it over their body. They will become and look like you. They can also mimic the voice of the last person they killed. When you're on this level and hear cries or people calling for help, immediately turn around and do not engage. Even if they're not hungry, do not engage one. They will be aggravated easily. Eventually you'll see an entrance to level 2. No turning back now. Level 2 consists of mainly dark maintenance tunnels stretching for millions of miles.
The few that have survived have dubbed it pipe dreams. There's a thick black fluid found everywhere. There are dead ends, locked doors, and open doors that lead to nowhere. Level 2 will be tougher than the last two. The hallways are narrow, preventing escape from any entities that you may encounter. Food and water are also harder to find. The entities are some of the most dangerous in the back rooms. I know, keeps getting better. The ones you may see here are smilers, clumps, hounds, death moths, skin takers, and insanities. You know about a few of those, but you don't need to know about the other ones. Just escape as soon as you spot them. You'll have to get lucky on food and water. The only liquid that is consistent is the black sludgy material, which I would assume is toxic. Temperatures also start to rise here. The hallway won't be too bad, but if you find yourself in a room, you may feel an intense change of heat. Some say it'll be upwards of 105 degrees Fahrenheit. Try to avoid this at all costs, but if you have to go through, make it as fast as possible. You may be transported to another, even more dangerous level of the back rooms if you stay in the heat for too long. You want to go through every level, not jump into unknowns, believe me. Which brings us to floor 3, the electrical station. No surprise here, we're still in imminent danger. It also contains multiple entities that will now kill on sight. Strangely enough though, this floor contains plentiful resources, even phones. It is still important to keep your sanity. Overall, I'd recommend keeping your stay here brief. Don't get trapped or hung up on the food and water. Take what you can and find the exit to the next level. Chances of survival decrease every second. To exit this level, you must locate an elevator on the left side of the wall. Entering will most likely take you to level 5, but sometimes, if you're lucky, you may end up in level 4, the office. Level 4 will be a much needed break from the madness you've encountered so far. It's mostly devoid of entities. Like 3, this floor has an abundance of food and water. There are even drinking fountains in the hundreds here. You'll find people more frequently here. Once you discover the relative safety, you may want to stay here. In fact, many survivors have. At this level, you'll have to decide what you want to do. Stay in the office forever, or try to escape back to the real world. If you choose to leave, it'll only get worse from here. Level 5 is known as the Terror Hotel. Yeah, we would probably be better off not knowing the name of this floor before arriving. It's a relatively easy floor to survive though. The threat here is more psychological than physical. Do not underestimate this floor. It appears like an early 20th century hotel. There are only a few main areas you'll be able to access. The main hall and the boiler room. There are also entities here. Big surprise. The death moths are the most popular resident. Before you know it, they can swarm you, infecting you with their venomous bites. There are reports that getting attacked by death head moths in the back rooms will mummify your insides and out. But like regular moths, they're attracted to light. Stay in the darkness as much as you can. There's also the rumor of the beast of floor 5. It's dressed like a man, suit and all, but with an oxen face. Getting out isn't too difficult. Just locate the elevator you arrived in. It won't be in the same place. Follow the darkness until you see the familiar up and down arrows. The only option will be to go down. You've now found level 6. It's going to be a nightmare. It's widely considered to be the most dangerous level of all. It's called Lights Out. If you survive passing here, you truly have my respect. Most people get here by mistake, either by clipping through a false window or a spot in a hallway. Some people mistakenly explore the boiler room of level 5, entering this terrifying void. It's entirely devoid of all natural light. If you do not have a flashlight or a lighter, you will not survive. Human contact is impossible. It seems only you are here. That also means that entities are low, which is the only good thing about this place. The main attack will be on your sanity. You'll need to remind yourself of who you are and where you are. If you cannot maintain yourself, you will become an insanity, a zombie-like creature that feeds off the fear of others. You will be able to move freely throughout the back rooms, just not in your human form.
It's said that if you can survive for more than 48 hours, you'll appear in level 7. There's no door or clipped area. You'll also have no recollection of how you got there in the first place. Level 6 does have a sub-level. If you're being hunted by an entity or feel your sanity slipping, lie flat on the ground. There's a chance you'll clip into 6.1. This is an empty room filled with provisions. Strange, but true. Level 7 will find you in an area of a room that looks like level 0, but in the ocean. Not that dramatic, but there's varying levels of water where you now walk. It's easy to get disoriented here. You'll be walking and suddenly shift 180 degrees, plunging into frigid water that's now neck deep. It's not advised to stay here long due to hypothermia and unseen entities. You also need to avoid the Thing on level 7. It's believed to kill every other human and entity on this floor. At this point, you'll probably be low on food and water. There is plenty of water, but you may need to find others to trade with. There's also a rumor of a cult on level 7 that prays to the Thing. Either accept their offer and become one of them, or decline. If you decline, they will still trade with you, but may drug you and feed you to the Thing. This place is genuinely terrifying, as no one is sure what's real here. The only way out of level 7 is through an underwater cave. Find it in one of the rooms, and consider yourself incredibly lucky. You have entered one of the last levels, level 8, the cave system. The only hope you have in finding the exit is random. The cave is endless miles of darkness. Entities litter the cave systems. Spiders are said to be the rulers of this place. It's not uncommon to run into a queen's nest here. Try every opportunity to clip through the floor or the walls. Floors after level 8 are not officially documented, and as such, cannot be described accurately. These floors are known as the quantum unstable floors. Every floor that I've mentioned has a secondary floor. The most popular are the hub, the hive, and the end. The end is a fake floor that makes users think they have escaped the back rooms. This floor is relatively dangerous and is advised to not enter any door marked exit. The end can come at any time. God be with you if you've entered this place. The hive is an endless maze of caverns and caves covered in fleshy, pulsing skin. This is rumored to be where the entities all come from, which means they have to reproduce somewhere. It's also the floor with the highest documented entities, naturally. You can enter this from level 6 or 8 if you're unlucky enough. It can be exited through a passage directly west of the entrance. The hub is a tunnel with doors on either side, leading to the back rooms. At this time, you can only enter level 1, 2, and 3 from the hub. As far as we know, entities cannot enter the hub. This makes it dense with traders. This is another location I'd recommend staying if you wish to live out the rest of your life in relative comfort. So, we now know all the documented levels of the back room. Now, the question is, how would you survive? Personally, I think I'd call it a day at floor 4. The risk is too great for me. What would you do?